cards for Ali.
Presenter is Asaka Ishiguro, who is a master's student in the Conflict Analysis and Resolution Program at George Mason University. After graduating from Meiji Gakuin University in Tokyo with a BA in International Studies in 2010, Asaka served for 3 years as a board member of Helping Children in the Holy Land, a Japanese nonprofit organization in which she organized financial support for elementary school children and youth exchange programs in Israel and Palestine. Having visited several Middle Eastern countries, Asaka has developed an interest in personal level dialogues among members of various religious and ethnic groups currently under conflict, focusing in particular on the engagement of civilians for development in conflict situations in the Middle East. Asaka.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to present my research, International NGOs and Humanitarian Aid in Conflict Field. So let me quick go over my abstract. Please have a look English version while I'm reading the Japanese section. このセッションでは国際 NGO が紛争下での人道支援活動において直面している問題について、またそうした問題を解決するための法律的な方法について考察します。これまでに NGO が直面してきた問題は、政治的な課題から各セクターとの関係の不和など多くの理由が存在しています。実際の現場ではそれぞれの紛争の背景、状況に合わせて方法を検討していかなければなりません。これらの研究報告を踏まえ、現在シリア内戦下での人道支援の問題に対するアプローチについて最後に考察します。So my interest in this topic all began with this question. Given the obstacles faced by international NGOs, how can humanitarian assistance be operated most effectively in conflict-affected communities? This question came up to me when I watched the news reporting ongoing conflicts. It was very hard to see innocent people losing their homes, shouting because of the loss of their families, and anticipating their life, lack of foods and shelters. As a conflict resolution student, this scene kept me thinking why these people are left suffering, although so many generous researchers in my field have been greatly contributing to analyze, produce the resolutions to conflict around the world. In such situations, humanitarian assistance is extremely needed for the suffering under the conflict. However, in reality, international NGOs often also reported that there are difficulties in implementing their operations. So according to this abstract and research motivation, I will organize my presentation by beginning of the problems of the humanitarian assistance for NGOs, followed by introducing some approaches by the academics. And later on, I would like to try to apply these approaches into the ongoing conflict situations, using Syrian civil war as an example. So before we look at problems, let me explain about humanitarian assistance in conflict situation. According to Marelova, humanitarian assistance is defined as intended short-time period provided for activities in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. Even though it is said as short-term, in reality there is no definition of the period, and this assistance seldom extends to a long term. These aids are usually provided by international communities, neighboring countries, and international NGOs, and they provide various types of assistance, such as foods, clothes, shelters, and community support. In a conflict-affected situation, victims are often generated due to racial, ethnic, or religious discriminations. Also, political dynamics greatly influence to the conflict situation. As a result, the damages and the victims are easy to expand according to the conflict dynamics. In the case of Syria, the civil war was started on March 15, 2011, affected by the wave of so-called the Arab uprising. The opposition group first attempted to overthrow the Assad regime. However, the confrontation between the regime and the oppositions became devastating, and the opposition groups were also divided into different divisions according to their interests. And this situation became the domestic situation into chaos. And due to the tight government control of the foreign media and organizations, the current domestic situation is still also unknown at all. Meanwhile, in 2013, the use of chemical weapon was allegedly reported. However, the examination of the damage has not been fully achieved yet. Also, UNHCR reported in March 2014 that the total number of domestic deaths is assumed more than 100,000. Number of refugees exceeded over 2.5 million, and internally displaced people would be over 6.5 million. Under such situation, the humanitarian assistance inside and outside of Syria is emergently needed. However, despite of those high demand of the humanitarian assistance, NGOs are sometimes faced with problems when they operate assistance. Through my literature review, I found 3 types of relational obstacles between international NGOs and each sector in the humanitarian assistance system. The first one is different between the donor countries and the NGOs. Donor countries such as the United States or European countries mainly is the funded sources for those international NGOs. However, those countries were often determining their assistance and donor amounts based on their interests. Sometimes NGOs are very limited of use of those donations. Secondly, the relationship with local governments is seen as a challenge in a couple of articles. Here, local governments mean the national local governments as well as the smaller groups, which leads the citizens. These local authorities don't always warmly welcome NGOs or foreign people because NGOs are often considered as intervener of the territory of authorities. As a result, those authorities interrupt humanitarian projects or even threaten the organizations. In conflict fields, the problems regarding this category are often reported, especially when they are faced with the difficulty to keep security in project operations, which may cause injury or death of the officers. Additionally, I will mention the relationship with the civilians as a recipient of this assistance. NGOs usually attempt to deliver supplies and support the non-material issues to the people who are in need of assistance. However, due to misunderstandings or miscommunication with local people, assistance often results in ineffective, and sometimes NGOs are faced with a rejection from local people. Having seen these problems, let's move to look at the existing theory to solve these problems. In the conflict resolution area, many researchers have developed theories and approaches to solve those difficulties and to promote the effective humanitarian systems. Although there are more other important theories, I would like to present two major types of approaches among them today. The first one is to take active approaches. Among these theories, Stephenson Jr. suggests that revolutionary ideas. His claim is about building the new network among the few representatives from aid agencies and locals, and leave the whole authorities to this network from decision-making to operation regarding an assistance issue. By taking more positive actions, Stephenson Jr. expects this system as a faster and a more effective way to provide the assistance. On the other hand, there is another angle of approach. Let's call this as passive approach. Anderson proposes that NGOs should focus on their abilities and should not extend their assistance territories from what they have been expected. Anderson says too much confidence among NGOs sometimes leads to discord with other sectors, especially local governments. Also, under the conflict situation, any side effects by assistance operations should be considered. Focusing on these terms of assistance will help the organization in case of emergency and in need of evacuation. In addition, she argues do no harm theory. This theory was inspired by medical doctors' pledge. When doctors become practitioners, they vow that they would practice medical treatments within the extent that they will not harm patients. Anderson sees that the same situation in the assistance field. Nothing is better than harm someone. Keeping their oath would protect both locals and NGOs themselves. Even though I mentioned active and passive approach here, these approaches were not necessarily contradicted each other. Sometimes, for those conflict situations, these approaches should be combined each other. So, today I would like to try to apply those theories into the ongoing situation by taking the example of International Committee of Red Cross, called ICRC. ICRC has been working in Syria as an assistant operator even before the Syrian uprising occurred, and still is keeping their projects. In their annual report in 2012, while ICRC reported the success in providing necessary supplies to the people, it also reported tough challenges they are faced. As for donor countries, these countries haven't come to a common agreement on its stance towards Syria. Syria is one of the political front lines between United States and EU countries versus Russia and Iranian sides. This balance of power among the international community causes big support of ICRC activities. Also, ICRC is puzzling about uneasy situation inside Syria, which causes which causes the unable to access to the local people. This is rather previous stage to the actual assistance activities, but this lack of knowledge, that lack of information will prevent them to implementing any assistance for the Syrian people. However, I see here that the biggest problem in implementing humanitarian assistance in Syria is the relationship with the local government, which is the Assad regime or opposition groups. ICRC have tried to access to the detained people through the negotiation with the Assad regime, but this regime sometimes accepted their request, but also later on they refused to talk to the local people. ICRC tried to send up their president to Syria in order to talk with the local government several times, but the situation was hardly improved. Having said that, I propose here two suggestions use these two approaches to overcome the difficulties in the initial stage. First, from the active approaches perspective, international NGOs can promote the political negotiations among international community. They have a huge power to push for those international political situations. And also, cooperating with the local figures and institutions can be another channel to tackle with local governments, since those local figures and institutions have a power to influence to the situation. Also, by collaborating with those NGOs, which is in a different size and background, they should have more access to the local people. In this initial stage of Syrian conflict, passive approaches is a little bit difficult to find because of the lack of access. However, I will try to show a couple of suggestions here. First of all, NGOs can take a certain distance from the political stagnation. NGOs are independent organization from any government, which is partly the advantages to tackle with those conflicts. And also, NGOs can take a focal areas or subject to donate the assistance according to their controlling parties. In Syria, the territory was almost divided into a couple of areas according to the controlling parties. And this, by analyzing those differences, NGOs can take different measures to tackle with the difficulties with the people. As a last part, even though they have very difficult times to access to the people, NGOs can be prepared for in case of greater emergency in the future. In a conclusion, here I explain the three categories of the obstacles that international NGOs are facing with, and I explain the two types of approaches that the existing researchers have provided. By integrating these approaches, international NGOs can determine their stance toward the conflict situations. For further future, in case of Syria, the conflict occurs very devastatingly, and the victims are easily increased in such situations. So my conclusion is that researchers and academic field are really demanded to implement, to establish the theories and implement those approaches immediately. Thank you very much.